My fingertips went numb first, then my whole hand, as my father's words crawled through the phone and settled like ice in my chest. "Pathetic," he spat, his Sunday morning righteousness crackling through the speaker. "Don't show up for Christmas? Spare us your moods, we'll be better off." He paused, then added with practiced disdain, "And don't make this about money. Adults handle their own bills." I stared at the budgeting spreadsheet on my laptop, the one where I'd tracked 4 years of paying his rent, my brother's tuition, utilities that kept their lights on while mine flickered. My hand trembled slightly, causing the spoon to tap against my coffee mug in tiny, embarrassed clicks. "My name is Olivia Welch. I'm 27, and I spent years being the family ATM while they treated my heart like insufficient funds. This is the story of how I stopped financing my own erasure. There's a special kind of silence that happens when the person who raised you tries to shrink you small enough to fit inside their pride. I felt it in my jaw, in my bones. I wanted to argue. I wanted to beg. Instead, I watched steam rise and disappear from my mug like every thank you he'd never said. The house smelled like cinnamon toast and printer ink. Outside, thin snow whispered against the windows like someone softly erasing a chalkboard. A red ribbon from last year's abandoned gifts lay coiled near the sugar jar, resembling a vein, the kind that keeps giving until there's nothing left. "Don't come," Dad repeated, as if my presence was a stain to be scrubbed. In the background, I heard the clatter of pans and the sharp, delighted laugh of my stepmom, Vanessa. Someone, probably my brother, Ryan, muttered, "Finally," like a door had closed on schedule. "Okay," I said, the smallest word that ever felt like a cliff edge. I ended the call and stared at the budgeting sheet I'd maintained like a secret altar. Rent, Dad. Utilities, Dad. Tuition, R. Due dates highlighted in yellow. Confirmation emails saved in neat folders. "Adult," he'd said. "Handle your own bills." I opened the banking portal. The cursor blinked, one impatient heartbeat, then another. Somewhere in my apartment, the heater clicked and clicked like distant footsteps deciding whether to leave or stay. I hovered over Manage Recurring Payments, my thumb rubbing the edge of that red ribbon until it bit into my skin. In the hallway, my phone buzzed, a voicemail from Dad arriving before the dial tone had fully faded. I pressed play and leaned forward, breath held as his voice filled the room like a draft sneaking under the door. The voicemail started with static, the kind that sounds like someone thinking too hard about whether they should speak at all. Then came his sigh. "Olivia, look, maybe I said that wrong. Vanessa thinks you're too sensitive. You take things personally. Just don't make this difficult, okay?" That word, sensitive, cracked through me like ice underfoot. I could almost see his face in the dark window, the wrinkle between his brows that always meant, "You disappointed me again." The next morning, I walked to the corner cafe with my laptop. The December air was sharp enough to hurt good. I ordered the cheapest black coffee, opened my emails, and saw the usual rent reminders, tuition invoices, power company notifications. For years, those bills had hit my inbox, but drained his balance because I'd linked my account to his. Because family helps family, he'd once said when I was 20, and naive enough to believe generosity wasn't supposed to feel like debt. That phrase replayed in my head as I stared at the banking screen. Family helps family. I clicked Disable Autopay, then Cancel link. Confirmation emails stacked up like tiny revolutions. My phone buzzed, a group text from Ryan. "Dad says you're making drama again. Stay away this year." A snowflake emoji followed, the digital version of their smug silence. Despite blocking most of his messages months ago, I'd kept the family group chat active just to stay informed about holidays and emergencies. I looked outside the cafe window. A father and daughter passed by, laughing about some secret. She wore a Santa hat too big for her head. He carried her cocoa so she wouldn't spill it. I smiled, then caught my reflection. Tired eyes, steady hands. They'd spent years treating me like a wallet wrapped in apology, but winter teaches patience. It buries what doesn't belong. I closed my laptop, left a $1 tip I couldn't spare, and walked home through the hush of snow. The world looked clean for once. My inbox pinged again, a new voicemail from Dad. I didn't play it yet. Some silences deserve to linger before they break. By the time I reached my apartment, dusk had turned the city into a watercolor of bruised purples and golds. The Christmas lights across the street blinked like a nervous heartbeat. Too bright, too cheerful. I tossed my gloves on the counter, opened Dad's new voicemail, and pressed play. "Olivia, the electric company called. Said the card bounced. What's going on? You know I can't deal with this stuff right now. Just fix it. Just fix it. Not, how are you? Not, I'm sorry." His voice carried the same command he used when I was a kid, the tone that meant I'd better move before his patience ran out. I stood there, phone against my ear, letting his words settle like cold dust in the air. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My bank app still glowed open on my laptop, the balance steady, untouched for once. My heart thudded slower than usual. Not angry, not scared, just calm. Like the moment after a storm when you realize nothing's left to blow away. A memory flickered. 13 years old, Dad yelling about how Ryan's new sneakers were an investment and how my art supplies were a waste. I'd stayed quiet then, too, promising myself that one day I'd earn enough to never need his approval again. I kept that promise. I just never thought I'd need to unearn his love to keep my peace. That night, snow fell thick against the window, muting the world outside. I drafted a short email. All financial links between our accounts have been permanently removed. Merry Christmas. I read it twice, my reflection faint in the screen's glow. Then hit send. My phone lit up immediately, 10 missed calls, then 12. Finally, a text from Ryan. "You've gone too far." He's furious. I stared at it, thumb hovering over reply. 4 years I'd been their safety net, the invisible thread holding their comfort together. Now that thread had snapped, and they were tumbling through their own winter. Outside, the streetlight flickered once, like a slow, deliberate blink, and I whispered, "Finally." The next morning, I woke to the sound of relentless knocking. I knew that rhythm. 3 quick, 1 pause, 2 firm hits. Ryan. I opened the door halfway. He stood there in his designer coat, red scarf, and that permanent smirk that said, "I'm here to clean up your mess again." Though I'd moved twice since the family fallout began, Ryan had always been able to track me down through our shared Amazon account that I'd forgotten to disconnect, the same account I'd used to send him textbooks last semester. "Dad's losing it," he said without greeting. "The power's out and tuition's overdue." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're doing this for attention." I leaned against the doorframe. "Attention? I've been paying those bills for 4 years, Ryan. You never even said thank you." He rolled his eyes. "You didn't have to, Olivia. You just did. That's kind of your thing, right? The martyr act." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. He brushed past me into my apartment, scanning the space like an inspector. His gaze paused on the single small tree in the corner, wrapped in soft yellow lights. The only gift I'd allowed myself. "You live alone with this," he muttered. "Maybe Dad's right. You're weird lately." I inhaled slowly, keeping my tone steady. "I'm just done pretending love is measured in money." Ryan scoffed. "You've changed." "Good," I replied. He frowned, pacing. "Look, can you just send the payments?" He's embarrassed. "The landlord's been calling." I watched him fiddle with his phone, desperate not for Dad's comfort, but for control. That's what they all wanted, a version of me that stayed quiet, compliant, convenient. "I'm not fixing what broke me," I said quietly. He froze, eyes narrowing. "So you're punishing us?" "No," I said. "I'm finally letting you feel what I felt for years. Forgotten." The silence stretched until even the clock seemed afraid to tick. He left without another word, the door clicking shut like the final line in a chapter I'd reread too many times. When his footsteps faded, I sank to the floor beside the tree. The lights reflected off the silver ornaments glowing faintly on my skin. For the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like a performance. It felt like peace dressed in quiet rebellion. 2 days later, the first message came from Dad. Short, sharp, written like a bill notice rather than a plea. "Need funds. Stop acting childish. Rent due." I read it twice, then set the phone face down on the counter. The apartment was filled with the soft smell of pine from my little tree, the one that never asked for anything back. A snowstorm was crawling through the city, muffling the world. I wrapped myself in a blanket and watched flakes drift against the window, each one dissolving like an unspoken apology. For years, I'd wired money while listening to his insults echo through the phone. Too emotional, not practical. You'll never make it without us. He never realized I already had. The only thing I'd needed to survive was the courage to stop saving people who enjoyed watching me drown. That afternoon, a notification blinked. Voicemail. 3 new. First, Dad's voice slurred with fury. You think you're teaching me a lesson? You're immature. Second, silence. Except the faint sound of wind and something that almost sounded like regret. Third, Vanessa's voice, brittle as glass. He's sick, Olivia. He needs you. Don't make this about your feelings. My feelings? I laughed. The kind that comes out half broken, half free. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and logged into my dedicated financial records account, which I'd meticulously maintained since starting to help them. Every payment I'd ever made, every transfer, every auto draft had receipts tied to my name. I organized them into a single folder, proof of responsibility. Then I drafted an email to the landlord, the university, and the utility companies, politely confirming that all accounts were now under their legal responsibility. No anger, no bitterness, just clean official language. By evening, another text from Ryan arrived. Dad says you're heartless. You'll regret this. I stared at it while the heater hissed like a tired sigh. My reflection in the window looked calm. Not heartless, just finished. Outside, carolers sang faintly from the corner store, their voices soft and uncertain, like the world itself wasn't sure whether to keep celebrating or finally start changing. The morning after Christmas, I woke to silence, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow. No calls, no apologies, just stillness, like the world had paused to take sides. I made oatmeal, sat by the window, and watched the snow bury everything that hadn't learned to move on. Then came a ping, not from Dad, but from the university portal. Notice. Student account placed on hold due to unpaid tuition. Ryan's son, the one I'd been quietly covering since his freshman year. I stared at the screen. I had set up account alerts for all payments I managed, including Ryan's son's tuition, which explained why I still received notifications even after stopping payments. So, it had finally reached them. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling. I scrolled down and saw a note from the bursar's office. Attempted contact with parent unsuccessful. I smiled faintly. The irony was delicious. All those years, Dad calling me immature, yet his life ran on my quiet consistency. By noon, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree of panic. Ryan, what did you do? His classes are frozen. Dad, you've humiliated this family. Vanessa, you've proven you're cruel. I read each message slowly, sipping coffee between their outrage like it was a new language I was finally fluent in. Accountability. I typed a single reply. Actions have consequences. Merry Christmas. Send. That evening, I took a walk through the park near my apartment. The trees were wrapped in quiet gold lights, the air crisp and forgiving. Kids were sledding down the hill, laughter echoing into the cold. It hit me. This was the first Christmas I wasn't trying to earn love through sacrifice. The first one where peace didn't cost me a piece of myself. When I came home, the answering machine blinked red again. I pressed play. Dad's voice was softer this time, uncertain. Olivia, maybe I shouldn't have said that word. Maybe I pushed too far. Just call me, okay? I didn't delete it. I didn't save it either. I simply let it play until the tape clicked to silence. A silence that, for the first time, belonged entirely to me. Days blurred into that quiet stretch between Christmas and New Year's when the world feels half asleep. Outside, melted snow had turned the streets into mirrors, reflecting lights from windows where families gathered. Mine wasn't one of them. I spent the evening rearranging my small apartment, not out of boredom, but out of ritual. Every shelf I cleared felt like reclaiming inches of myself. I boxed up old bank statements, donation receipts, even those scribbled notes where Dad had once written, "Send by Friday." They all went into the same cardboard box labeled "Closure." Halfway through, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Dad or Ryan. It was an unknown number. Olivia? This is Mrs. Kent, your father's landlord. I'm sorry to bother you, but your dad said you handled his payments. His rent's 2 months overdue. He gave me your number. Should I be expecting... I interrupted gently. No, that arrangement ended. Please contact him directly. Her pause was kind. I understand. You've been helping them for years, haven't you? Yes, I whispered, but I'm done now. When I hung up, I sat still for a long time. The city outside hummed faintly, buses groaning, wind threading through alleys, life continuing without permission. At midnight, I opened my journal and wrote 3 lines. I am not their emergency fund. I am not their apology sponge. I am not their shame to fix. Then I turned off my phone completely. That night, I dreamed of the lake house we used to visit when I was little, before the remarriage, before the resentment. In the dream, I was standing on the dock holding the red ribbon from my kitchen. I dropped it into the water, watched it float away like a vein releasing pressure. When I woke, the first dawn of a new year painted gold across my ceiling. The heater clicked on, steady, warm. For once, I didn't dread the sound. It felt like breath returning. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew it would be mine. New Year's Day arrived quiet and colorless. The streets outside were wet with melted snow, the air holding that faint metallic smell of change. I made tea, opened my curtains wide, and sat on the floor surrounded by unopened letters, bills, reminders, demands. All of them addressed to a version of me that no longer existed. When my phone finally lit up again, it was a video call request from Dad. For a long minute, I just watched it ring, the reflection of the screen flickering against my mug. Then I answered. He looked older, unshaven, circles under his eyes, a lamp tilted behind him, like everything in his world leaned the wrong way. Olivia, he started, voice uncertain. I didn't realize how much you were doing. Things got rough after the payment stopped. I shouldn't have called you immature. I studied his face. The man who once treated me like an ATM with a heartbeat now looked human, fragile, even. You didn't realize? I said softly, because it was easier than shouting. He blinked, trying to smile. Maybe we could talk sometime. Start fresh. I nodded, but not in promise, just acknowledgement. Maybe. But it has to be real this time. No debts, no guilt. He nodded back, understanding more in silence than he ever did through words. We hung up and the room felt both lighter and sadder, like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding, but still remembered the pain. I decided that morning that I would maintain limited contact with my father moving forward. Monthly calls only, with firm boundaries about money. Ryan and Vanessa would remain distant figures in my life, their relationship with me permanently altered, but not entirely severed. I opened my window. Cold air swept in, sharp and honest. The sound of church bells drifted faintly from downtown, mingling with laughter from somewhere below. I whispered into that air, not for him, not for anyone, just for myself. Peace doesn't always come as forgiveness. Sometimes it comes as distance. I folded the final bank document and tucked it into the closure box, sealing it shut. On top, I placed that red ribbon, the same one that once symbolized obligation. It now meant release. As the wind curled through the curtains, I let the quiet settle, warm and unshaken. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I was free. As for Ryan's son, whose education I'd quietly funded for 2 semesters, he would have to find another path forward. I sent him one final email explaining that I could no longer cover his tuition, but included information about financial aid options. His response, a terse, "I understand," told me he'd figure it out. Some lessons are learned through necessity.